Mayfair, London streets lined with gleaming white facades, windows stretching from floor to ceiling, and cars gliding as if they never touched the ground. Here, money bought comfort and the illusion that life itself was flawless. For Amara Bennett, it was a gilded prison. She had never belonged to the upper class. Born into a middle-class family in Birmingham, Amara had carved her own path, reaching success through sheer grit. At 28, British Vogue named her one of the design talents to watch this decade. Her sketches, dresses that married daring cuts with traditional African fabrics, had drawn the attention of Harrods and Selfridges. Paris Fashion Week was only weeks away, and the name Amara Bennett was glowing with promise. Then came the accident. Charles Whitmore, the man she had fallen madly in love with and married only a year earlier, was declared paralyzed from the waist down after a car crash. Founder of Whitmore Technologies, a titan in financial trading software, his name flooded the papers, the media mourned, and Amara abandoned everything to become his sole caregiver. Paris, Milan, £1 million contracts evaporated with one midnight phone call announcing the accident. 4 years. Amara lived in a draining rhythm for 4 years that consumed her whole being. She rose at 5 every morning, preparing Charles's medication. 23 pills in neatly labeled plastic containers, color-coded notes attached. Then breakfast toast untouched by eggs, coffee brewed precisely to 65 degrees Celsius, or else he would grimace and complain that the spasms made his stomach ache. Then came the bathing. Amara had learned to use the electric hoist to lift him from bed to shower chair, how to massage his skin to prevent sores, how to maneuver a body as heavy as a sandbag, yet too fragile to endure the slightest mishandling. She had once been a sought-after designer. Now, the same hands that created masterpieces only scrubbed the body of a man she thought was fate's victim. At night, Charles demanded she sleep beside his hospital bed. "I'm afraid of sudden seizures," he would say, eyes glassy, voice trembling. Amara laid a small mattress on the floor, her back aching endlessly, but she endured. That was love, sacrifice. Grace, or rather, Lady Eleanor Whitmore, her mother-in-law, appeared often in tweed Chanel suits, feathered hats, and eyes as cold as stone. "Amara, my dear," she would say in a voice dripping with sweetness and venom, "a good wife does not complain. A proper wife devotes her life to her husband, especially since you're unlike the other women in the Whitmore family." The unfinished sentence was sharp enough. Amara knew her brown skin would forever be a thorn in the woman's side. And so Amara endured. She told herself, "I chose this path. I chose Charles. I won't abandon him." The day of reckoning arrived like an invisible blade. That afternoon, Amara was preparing tomato soup from the Whitmore family recipe, the only dish Charles claimed could make him eat with pleasure. Carrying the Italian ceramic bowl upstairs, she opened the bedroom door. Her hands trembled. The bowl slipped, shattering into 1,000 pieces. And before her eyes, Charles Whitmore stood, upright. Not only that, but he also moved with ease, strength, and muscle tautness. And in his arms was Sophie Miller, the 24-year-old maid Amara had hired just 3 months earlier. 4 seconds. Amara counted them silently, one by one. 4 seconds of stillness, breathless, eyes wide, taking it all in. The sound of breaking ceramic jolted them from their embrace. Charles turned, shock flashing across his face before swiftly giving way to something colder calculation. "Amara," his voice rang out, clear, steady, not trembling or slurred, the voice of the financial mogul who once commanded boardrooms. Amara stepped back, her heart pounding. In her mind, memories splintered apart. The sleepless nights, the aching back from lifting him, the scolding from Lady Eleanor, the lost career, all of it. And now, all of it is nothing but a charade. Charles strode toward her, movements confident. Sophie hastily draped a shawl over herself, cheeks flushed but her eyes gleamed with defiance, not shame. "Let me explain," Charles said, but the hesitation betrayed him. A man paralyzed for 4 years could not walk with such ease. Amara fixed her gaze on him, her voice unnervingly calm. "How long?" Silence. But silence itself was confession. "The accident, it never happened, did it?" she pressed, piecing the fragments together. Charles narrowed his eyes, then smirked, arrogant. Correct. The accident was necessary. I needed to disappear for a while. The FCA was scrutinizing my trades. And you, Amara, you were becoming too visible. Paris, Harrods, the press. I couldn't risk your success drawing attention to me. Nausea swept over her, not just from betrayal, but from realizing her life, 4 long years, had been a pawn in his game. You destroyed my career to protect yourself. Her voice cracked. Charles didn't deny it. Instead, he looked proud. It solved many problems. Insurance, lawsuits, assets. I'm 10 times wealthier now. And us, Amara, we're 10 times richer. No. There is no us anymore. Her words made him falter. She cast one last look at him, then turned, stepping out of the room that had been her prison for 4 years. Behind her, Charles shouted, "You think anyone will believe you? Who would trust a woman of color abandoning her disabled husband? My mother has recorded every instance of your negligence. Everything will be used against you." Amara didn't stop. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway, past the stairlift she had installed for him, through the heavy doors of the mansion. She carried only her handbag and a spare phone she had bought months earlier. An instinct, a faint warning that something was wrong. Outside, the London night was brisk. Her breath rose in pale clouds. She got in the car, drove away silently, and never looked back. 4 years of captivity, 4 years of sacrifice, and now she knew the truth. Charles Whitmore's performance was over, and Amara Bennett's play had only just begun. Lila Bennett's flat in Brixton was far from spacious, but it felt like an oasis for Amara. London rain fell steadily outside the window, neon lights shimmering across the scattered puddles. Amara sat silently, hands wrapped around the steaming cup of tea Lila had just made. "You already knew, didn't you?" Lila's voice was gentle, but sharp as glass. Amara didn't answer at once. Her eyes were empty, as though staring through the walls. At last, she nodded. "Not everything, but deep down, I always felt something was wrong." Lila gripped her sister's hand. "He played his role well. But you were the one who sacrificed for real. And the truth is, Charles Whitmore turned your life into his stage." The very next morning, Charles began his new performance, this time as the betrayed husband. In the Whitmore mansion, he lay once more on the hospital bed, eyes glassy, face contorted as if in unbearable pain. Sophie sat at his side, holding his hand with staged compassion. Lady Eleanor swept into the room, her navy dress hugging her slender frame, the scent of Dior trailing in her wake. "My poor boy," she murmured, casting Sophie a glance of silent approval. "She's gone," Charles groaned. "Amara left me. Last night she screamed at me and then walked out." "Shameful," Lady Eleanor replied, her tone dripping with false pity. "I warned you from the beginning someone like her could never stay bound to a Whitmore. The Bennett blood is not noble enough, not white enough, not traditional enough." Sophie smiled faintly, but it was not tenderness. It was a victor's smile, the smile of someone who had claimed a prize never meant to be theirs. "You still have me," she whispered, letting her hand linger on Charles's chest longer than necessary. Charles returned her gaze with a suggestion, but the moment he noticed his mother watching, he transformed into the frail invalid, lips trembling. "I don't know what Amara will say out there. If she accuses me, if she tries to expose me." Lady Eleanor chuckled, the seasoned smile of a woman who had fought social wars all her life. And who would believe her? A woman of color, abandoning her paralyzed husband after 4 years, now suddenly claiming he was faking. The courts, the press, the public, they will call her ungrateful, cruel, a witch with no heart. Charles nodded, swallowing her words whole. It wasn't just reassurance, it was strategy. In the days that followed, Amara's phone buzzed with messages from an unknown number. "Don't resist. No one will believe you. My mother has kept records. You left me alone for hours, forgot my medication, lost your temper. If you abandon me, I'll ruin you. I'll turn you into the deranged wife everyone cast aside." Each line stabbed Amara's chest, but instead of fear, a different fire flared within her, fury. For 4 years, she had endured Lady Eleanor's dripping venom. Amara, are you sure you gave him the pills on time? Your memory seems to be slipping. Perhaps the pressure is making you unstable. Now, she understood. Those weren't concerns of a mother. They were bricks laid carefully, constructing a false psychiatric record, an escape hatch to confine Amara if needed. One afternoon, Sophie entered the drawing room where Lady Eleanor was arranging a file of documents. "Madam," Sophie said, voice polite but trembling with impatience. "When will Charles divorce her? He promised me." Lady Eleanor looked up, eyes narrowing. "Divorce? So that you can become the Whitmore wife? Don't be naive, Sophie. You are a diversion, a pastime. The honor of this family will never be tied to a nameless maid." Sophie froze, color draining from her face. Amara wasn't there then, but had she been, she would have seen that supposed allies were nothing more than pawns. Sophie left the room quietly, but her eyes glimmered with rebellion. Meanwhile, Amara met Leela again. They sat in a small cafe in Shoreditch, jazz humming softly, the rich aroma of roasted beans filling the air. "What will you do next?" Leela asked, worry edging her voice. Amara met her gaze. "I can't fight him head-on. He's prepared everything. Forged medical records, his mother's testimony, even a fabricated psychiatric file about me. If I rush to expose him, I'll lose. So what's your plan?" Silence. Amara paused, then continued. "I'll let him think I'm afraid, that I've given up. Meanwhile, I'll prepare. I need a legal ally, not just a lawyer, but someone who understands manipulators. Someone who can see through him." Lila's lips curved into a knowing smile. "I have just the person." And so, the name Edward Carlyle surfaced, a young lawyer already notorious in London for bringing down influential business people in cases once thought unwinnable. At the Whitmore mansion, Charles perfected his act. Whenever the family doctor visited, he performed pain. Face twisted, hands trembling, legs unmoving. Fake MRIs appeared. Meticulously forged reports followed. The doctor, long accustomed to Whitmore's generous payments, suspected nothing. "Ah, Charles," the old man sighed. "So tragic. I fear you'll never recover." Charles grimaced, eyes welling. But the moment the door shut, he leapt to his feet, pacing, flexing muscles like an athlete. Lounging on the bed, Sophie watched with a half-bitter, half-scornful smile. "You're enjoying this role too much," she said, voice edged with contempt. Charles turned, eyes glacial. "It's not a role, Sophie. It's power. When you make the world believe a lie, you don't just control reality, you create it." That night, Lady Eleanor sat in her study, pen scratching across her diary with sharp, haughty strokes. "Amara is gone. Good. Easier to prove that she is unstable, abandoning her disabled husband in his hour of need. Charles must maintain a spotless image for when the miracle recovery is revealed. Sophie, the girl is too impatient. She must be restrained. A maid will not lower the Whitmore family." In the shadows of the hallway, Sophie overheard. Her hands shook. The promises of a rightful place in the Whitmore family evaporated into smoke. She realized she, too, was nothing but a pawn in their game. Amara sat across from Edward Carlyle in a centuries-old pub near Temple for the first time. A man in his 30s, silver already streaking his hair, eyes a cold, piercing grey as if they could strip away every disguise. "Miss Bennett," he said, voice steady and low, "I want the whole story, every detail, leave nothing out." And so she told him, about 4 years of care, about Lady Eleanor's scorn, about Sophie's shadowed presence, and finally the crash of the ceramic bowl. When she finished, Edward didn't respond immediately. He tapped his fingers lightly on the wooden table. "I've met men like Charles. Men are convinced they're smart enough to manipulate the entire world. They forget one thing. The bigger the ego, the bigger the cracks." Amara looked at him and felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. Edward leaned forward. "Are you ready, Miss Bennett? Because if we begin, this won't just be a divorce. This will be the war that brings down an empire of lies." Amara clenched her hands. For 4 years, she had lost almost everything. But now, in this moment, a vow stirred silently in her heart. She would reclaim it all and more. Amara returned to the Whitmore mansion after 2 days of disappearance. The heavy oak doors creaked open, the Swarovski chandelier above the hall glittering as always. Yet today, everything felt different. Each crystal sparkled like a sharp hook, poised to pierce her skin. Lady Eleanor sat statuesque in a cream tweed dress in the drawing room. Beside her, Charles sat slumped in his wheelchair, face twisted in pain, lips trembling as though he had just endured a violent spasm. Sophie stood behind him, hands on the chair's back, expressionless. "Ah, you finally decided to return," Lady Eleanor said acidly. "Charles has worried himself sick. 2 days gone without a word. How irresponsible of you." Amara inhaled deeply. She lowered her voice, eyes shimmering with staged tears. "I'm sorry. I panicked. I saw strange things, and don't know if I'm still sane anymore." Lady Eleanor glanced at Charles, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. She turned back, her tone laced with sugary poison. "Of course, dear. 4 years of caring for a paralyzed man would unbalance anyone. But thankfully, we are here to help you." In Amara's eyes, the woman's intent was clear. They wanted to turn her into the unstable wife, to strip her words of meaning. Charles reached for Amara's hand. His grip was warm, firm, nothing like the weak hand he offered the doctor. "I forgive you, Amara. I know you're just exhausted. You've always been the devoted wife." Amara lowered her gaze, hiding the fury burning within. In her heart, she whispered, Perform well. I'll let you believe I've broken." That night, after Charles drifted into his counterfeit sleep and Sophie retreated to her room, Amara sat alone in the dark kitchen. A small black phone lay on the table, the secret device she had bought months ago. Her trembling fingers scrolled to a number saved as florist. Lila's voice answered instantly. "Amara, are you safe?" Amara swallowed hard. "I'm in the house. They think I've given up. Good. But Lila, I can't hold out long. I need a plan." "You already have one," Lila replied. "Edward wants to meet in secret. Not at his office near Temple, it's too risky. He has a safe apartment. We must take this step by step, Amara. No rash moves." Amara nodded, though her sister couldn't see. "I understand. I'll be patient. But Lila promised me one thing." "What is it?" "If I disappear, if they lock me in an asylum, you must expose everything. Give the evidence to Edward. Save me." Silence. Then Lila's voice returned, steady and fierce. "No, you will not disappear. You will win. We will bring them down." The next day, Amara slipped back into her role as the devoted wife. She spoon-fed Charles his porridge, wiped his lips, and cleaned the staged messes he deliberately made to prove his loss of control. "I don't know what I'd do without you," Charles murmured, voice quivering. Amara smiled faintly. "You'd be fine. You always know how to manage." A flicker of suspicion crossed his eyes, but then he leaned into her shoulder, like a child seeking comfort. Outside the door, Lady Eleanor peeked in, smiling with satisfaction at the sight of her daughter-in-law dutifully in place. That night, in her diary, she wrote, "The girl has returned. Good. Her spirit is fragile, easily shaped. In a few months, when Charles announces his miraculous recovery, we'll have ample proof that Amara was unbalanced, that she abandoned him. The Whitmore fortune will remain secure." One afternoon, Amara used the excuse of caregiver therapy, an idea Lady Eleanor had suggested, to reinforce Amara's supposed instability. Instead of visiting a doctor, Amara slipped into a modest flat near Southbank. Edward Carlyle was waiting. He wasn't in his usual tailored suit, but in a rolled-up shirt, tie loosened. He looked more ordinary except for those piercing grey eyes, still razor-sharp. "You're here," Edward said, voice low and firm. "Good. Tell me everything. No detail left out." And Amara told him about the threatening messages, Lady Eleanor's scorn, Sophie's mixture of naivety and menace, Charles's flawless patient act, and his hidden training sessions when unobserved. Edward listened, breaking in only with precise questions. "Do you have copies of the medical records? When your mother-in-law accused you of forgetting pills, was anyone else present? Has Sophie ever taken notes or used her phone around your husband?" Amara answered all, astonished at how he listened and assembled the story, every word a brick in the strategy he was building. At last, Edward said, Charles has built an elaborate play, but he's overconfident. He believes that with his mother and Sophie, the world will take his side. But the law isn't built on words but on evidence. And we will get evidence. How? Amara asked. I have an ally, Mei Lin Huang, tech expert. She's helped me crack money laundering rings. She'll monitor him covertly, gather data, and prove Charles isn't paralyzed, that he's living two lives at once. Amara sighed. How long do you think I can endure? I bathe him daily and sleep on the floor like a servant. It feels like torture. Edward's gaze softened. You endured 4 years. You can endure a few more weeks. The difference is this time, you're not enduring in vain. You're fighting. A silence fell. Amara felt her chest tighten, not with pain, but with something new. For the first time, someone told her she was not a victim, but a warrior. Back at the mansion, Amara kept her mask intact. When Sophie sneered, Are you sure you're stable enough to care for Charles? Amara replied, Yes, more stable than you think. Sophie froze, a flicker of doubt crossing her eyes. Amara was not as broken as they believed. As Charles sank into his counterfeit sleep that night, Amara lay on her cot staring at the ceiling. Edward's words echoed, You are a warrior. For the first time in 4 years, Amara felt she was no longer alone. A week had passed since Amara's first secret meeting with Edward Carlyle. She now lived a double life. By day, the dutiful wife, bending over the bed of a fraudulent invalid. By night, the quiet observer, storing every detail and every anomaly to report back to Edward. She knew this game was perilous. One slip, and Charles and Lady Eleanor would consign her to a psychiatric ward. Yet for the first time in 4 years, Amara felt something new purpose. One rainy evening, she used the excuse of attending a caregiver's support group to leave the mansion. She was headed to a short-term flat in Shoreditch, where Edward had arranged a meeting. Another figure was waiting inside the modest living room, a young Asian woman with shoulder-length hair and eyes sharp as blades. She wore a leather jacket, a laptop on the table, plastered with security seals. Amara, this is Mei Lin Huang, Edward introduced. A tech expert. She's cracked international money laundering rings. She'll help us expose Charles. Mei Lin's smile was fleeting. I'm no trenchcoat detective with a magnifying glass. I work with data, hidden cameras, and the web. Men like Charles, who think they control reality, always leave a digital trail. Amara's heart raced. So, have you found anything yet? Mei Lin spun the laptop toward her. A grainy video and CCTV footage from a luxury gym appeared. There was Charles Whitmore, the man the world believed paralyzed, doing pull-ups, muscles straining, sweat dripping. Amara gasped, hands trembling. She had known the truth, but seeing it bare stunned her. This was last week, 2 a.m., Knightsbridge, Mei Lin explained. He used a membership card under a shell company, Silver Crown Limited. Edward tapped his pen on the table. There's also footage from Wentworth Golf Club. He's been playing with Henry Ashford for 3 years. People thought it was secret physical therapy, but the truth is he's perfectly healthy. Amara stared at the screen, tears spilling not of sorrow anymore, but of rage. 4 years of cold floors, aching backs, sleepless nights, while he swung golf clubs in bespoke sportswear. We'll gather more, Edward assured. The heavier the evidence, the harder it is to deny. Mei Lin cut in. I've also tracked his finances. Dozens of offshore accounts in the Caymans, Belize, and Seychelles. He's moving money from insurance payouts, fake medical companies, and illegal trades. We're looking at over £50 million. 50 million, Amara whispered. 4 years of sacrifice, of selling her car, abandoning her firm, living as a servant while he built an empire of dirty wealth. Edward leaned toward her, voice resolute. We will take everything back, but to do that, you must continue the act. Stay weak, submissive, keep him unguarded. Amara wiped her tears. I will. I'll let him think I'm broken. But inside, I'll count the days until he falls. At the mansion, tension brewed. Sophie was growing restless. One morning, after Lady Eleanor had left the room, Sophie snapped at Charles. How much longer? You promised me. Amara left you once already. She doesn't love you. You need to divorce her and make us official. Charles, seated in his familiar wheelchair, looked up with a cold smile. You think you're entitled to demand anything? You're the mistress. My wife is still Amara. A divorce now would ruin my image. Timing is everything. But I'm carrying your child, Sophie hissed, then immediately lowered her voice, terrified Lady Eleanor might overhear. Charles arched an eyebrow. And that is why you'll stay quiet. Our child will be a backup card. For now, you play your role, the obedient maid. Sophia pallid. In that instant, it was clear. Amara, the deceived wife, and Sophie, the exploited mistress, shared the same fate, victims of a manipulator. One afternoon, Lady Eleanor summoned Amara to the drawing room. On the table lay a thick file. Amara, she said coldly, I've arranged an appointment with a psychiatrist. Your memory lapses, the missed medication, your 2-day disappearance. These symptoms cannot be ignored. Amara kept her face composed. I'll go, if it's for Charles's sake. Lady Eleanor's lips curled faintly. Good, you're finally learning your place. But as Amara walked down the hall, she allowed herself a thin smile. She would report everything to Edward and Mei Lin. If Lady Eleanor wanted to bait a trap, Amara would turn it against them. That night, the three allies sat in their safe flat. Mei Lin projected images, transaction maps, gym footage, and hotel receipts of Charles and Sophie's trysts. This will be enough to get the FCA interested, she said. But we need the killing blow. Evidence so undeniable that even the public won't doubt. Edward nodded. We'll make him reveal himself. And to do that, Amara, you'll have to stay close. Keep him convinced you're collapsing. When he drops his guard, that's when we strike. Amara inhaled deeply. She remembered the hollow-eyed nights of 4 wasted years. But now a new vow pulsed in her heart. I will no longer be his puppet. I will be the one pulling the strings. Charles sat in his secret study in the mansion, forbidden to Amara. Financial charts danced across his screens, millions flowing from one account to another. Lady Eleanor entered, wineglass in hand. Son, I worry. You're playing with fire. If Amara truly suspects... Charles cut her off, arrogance in his tone. Mother, she's nothing. A bird with broken wings. No career, no reputation. Aside from that, her sister is the only one who believes in her. I've turned her into nothing. Lady Eleanor sipped her wine, but worry flickered in her eyes. She knew better than anyone. The prouder the man, the more complex the fall. Amara lay on her cot late at night, listening to Charles's staged snores. She held her secret phone and typed a message to Edward. I'm ready. Make him fall. And in the darkness, Amara Bennett smiled for the first time in 4 years. The Whitmore mansion at night was oppressively silent. The grandfather clock in the hall struck with dry, hollow chimes, each reminding Amara that every passing second was another moment spent in the lair of her enemy. Charles slept in his sickbed, breathing steadily, sometimes punctuated by fake groans to complete his performance even in dreams. Sophie had retreated to her own room, and Lady Eleanor rested in the east wing. Amara lay on her narrow cot, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Sleep would not come. The feeling of being deceived, watched, and threatened was like an itch under her skin, impossible to scratch, only to endure. Close to 3 a.m., she rose. Barefoot, she moved silently through the hallways. Darkness swallowed everything, broken only by the faint glow of a night lamp brushing against the walls. An instinct guided her to Charles's private study, a room he always kept locked, claiming it held sensitive company documents. Tonight, the lock was slightly ajar. Amara's heart pounded. She eased the door open. Inside, the air reeked of leather and old wine. Shelves groaned with financial files and leather-bound ledgers. Using the flashlight on her phone, Amara rifled through a drawer, and there it was, a black leather journal, initials CW, embossed on the spine. She opened it. The first entry stole her breath. The 15th of March, 2016. Subject: Amara Bennett. Net worth: £2.1 million. Weaknesses: The mother is recently deceased, has few close relatives, and is ambitious, but lacks systemic support. Approach strategy. Upcoming fashion gala. Present image of a powerful yet vulnerable man. Amara trembled as she turned the page. The 3rd of September 2017. Marriage is progressing according to plan. Subject entirely devoted. Successfully planted the idea of delaying children to optimize control of assets. Mother agrees. Amara remains too strong, several years needed to erode her spirit. Her blood ran cold. Every smile, every bouquet, every whispered promise of romance, nothing but calculation. She flipped again. The 18th of January 2019. FCA scrutiny of transactions is intensifying. Henry Ashford is showing signs of suspicion. Must initiate paralysis plan. Research spinal injury videos for authenticity. Sophie was prepared to act as an assistant. Confident Amara will sacrifice her career rather than Milan. Amara bit her lip hard to keep from sobbing aloud. 4 years of doubt. Why had she missed Paris? The answer was here. Her life scripted like a puppet's dance. Her hands shook as she turned more pages. October 2021, 2 years into the role. Amara deteriorating. Symptoms: prolonged crying, insomnia, and weight loss. Perfect. Sophie was formally hired as a maid. Gaslighting phase intensified. Hiding items, altering medication, seeding memory doubts. Mother liaised with Fairhaven psychiatric records prepared in case of admission. Amara's chest heaved. He had called her collapse perfect. She forced herself onward. November 2024. Sophie pregnant. It is not in the original plan, but can be leveraged as insurance. Amara nearly discovered 3 times but was successfully misled. Continue psychological pressure to push her into a breakdown. Mother recommends accelerating psychiatric admission. Her nails dug into the desk. Every word and step was meticulously documented as if she were a lab specimen. Then, the final entry, the 10th of February 2025. Amara is now nothing but a walking corpse. She will never escape. In 6 months, announce miracle recovery, then file for divorce, citing emotional distance. Marry Sophie temporarily to legitimize the child and wait out the FCA investigation. Amara will be institutionalized or self-terminate. Survival odds past 1 year, under 10%. Amara dropped the journal, her hands ice cold. The words weren't mere notes. They were a death sentence, premeditated. And in that moment, fear inside her evaporated, replaced by something else. A cold, merciless fury. If Charles thought she was a puppet, he had made his fatal mistake. Puppets who read the script can shatter the stage. Quickly, she photographed every page with her hidden phone. The pale glow lit her face, transforming her into a conspirator with the shadows. When finished, she placed the journal back precisely, untouched in appearance. Back in her room, her heart thundered. Instead of lying down, she sent the photos straight to Edward. His reply came minutes later. "This is the smoking gun. Amara, you've changed the game. We must act tomorrow." Her response: "No. He'll suspect if I move too soon. I'll stay a few more days. I want him to believe he's already won until the end." A pause, then Edward's message: "Risky, but I trust you. Remember, you're not alone. Call me at the first sign of danger." Amara smirked faintly, closing the phone. She felt the balance of power tipping her way for the first time. The next day, Charles doubled down on his role. He groaned louder, feigned spasms, even forced Sophie to summon the doctor so Amara would have to sign papers assuming responsibility for negligence. She complied with submissive grace. But inside, her thoughts burned. "I've read your diary. I know what you are, and you will never see what's coming." In the safe flat, Edward and Mei Lin scrutinized the images. Mei Lin frowned. He documents like a pathologist. "This isn't just fraud, it's deliberate psychological torture, systemic abuse." Edward nodded grimly. With this diary plus the financial evidence, he won't just face fraud charges. He could be tried for conspiracy to cause grievous harm, even manslaughter if they prove he drove her to suicide attempts. Mei Lin exhaled. But Amara wants to stay. She's chosen the long game. That makes her dangerous because she's no longer afraid. Edward studied the screen, where Amara's cold smile lingered in the photo she'd sent. Admiration warred with unease in his chest. At the mansion, Lady Eleanor began to notice the shift. Watching Amara carry in tea with calm steps and unnervingly bright eyes one evening, she frowned. "You look different," she said. "No longer frantic. What are you hiding?" Amara placed the cup gently, bowing her head. "Nothing, Mother. I've accepted my fate." Lady Eleanor peered into her eyes, as if peeling back a mask. Then she nodded, convincing herself that Amara was broken at last. The truth was far darker. The woman before her was no longer prey. She was the hunter, waiting for her moment. Rain drizzled over London, streaking down the taxi window in long silver trails. Amara sat in the back seat, clutching her hidden phone. Her heartbeat thundered like a war drum. She and Edward had chosen this day, the day they would begin dismantling Charles Whitmore. Weeks of preparation had led to this moment. The evidence was ready. Footage of Charles working out at the gym in the dead of night, hotel invoices, offshore banking records, and above all the Devil's Diary. Today, all of it would be unleashed at once. Edward had orchestrated the plan like a conductor leading a symphony. 9 a.m. Divorce petition filed in family court. 9:15. Insurance and financial fraud complaints submitted to the city police. 9:30. FCA receives Mei Lin's full report on market manipulation. 10. Police arrive with a warrant for search and arrest. Amara had only one task: to keep playing the devoted wife until the knock came. That morning, the Whitmore mansion gleamed as usual. Lady Eleanor sat in the drawing room, sipping mint tea, the air of a queen upon her. Charles sat in his wheelchair, pale-faced, hands trembling over the morning paper. Sophie stood behind him, a silent shadow. Amara entered carrying a tray of coffee. "Drink this, Charles. You didn't sleep well last night, did you?" Charles looked up, eyes cold though his voice feigned weakness. "You're so thoughtful. I don't know what I'd do without you." Amara smiled softly, masking her contempt. "You'll find out very soon." Lady Eleanor interjected. "Amara, don't forget today's psychiatrist appointment. I expect you to attend." "Of course, Mother." Amara answered sweetly, but in her pocket, her phone buzzed Edward's message. "Filings complete. Stay calm. 60 minutes. 9:45 a.m. The iron gates clanged loudly. The doorbell rang in sharp bursts. Lady Eleanor frowned, rising. Sophie flinched. Charles's eyes flickered with panic for a split second before he smothered it. "London Police," a commanding voice called from outside. "Open up under warrant for the arrest of Charles Whitmore." The room froze. "Nonsense," Lady Eleanor snapped. "My son is paralyzed." "You're mistaken." Charles drew a breath, feigning tremors. "Amara, you must protect me. You're my wife." Amara looked at him calmly. "You're right. I am your wife, which is why I'll be here to watch when the truth comes out." The doors burst open. 5 officers in tactical vests stormed in. The lead officer stepped forward. "Charles Whitmore, you are under arrest for insurance fraud, financial fraud, and obstruction of investigation." Charles clutched the armrest, shaking. "I'm paralyzed. You can't." One officer tilted an iPad toward Lady Eleanor. "Really? Then explain this." On screen, clear footage of Charles in the Knightsbridge gym, sweat glistening as he lifted heavy weights, every muscle defined. Sophie gasped, hand over her mouth. Lady Eleanor's face drained of color. "Fake," Charles shouted. "Deep fake. You're being deceived." Amara stepped forward, eyes locked on him. "No, Charles. You deceived yourself. You left traces everywhere. And now, your play is over." Charles nearly sprang to his feet for a moment, then stopped, remembering his role. His knuckles whitened on the chair. Another officer read further charges. "The FCA has evidence of insider trading and illicit profits. All assets are frozen. You'll face trial." "This is a conspiracy," Lady Eleanor screamed. "Amara fabricated everything. She wants to steal the Whitmore fortune." Amara turned, her voice sharp as a blade. "If I wanted fortune, Why would I spend 4 years sacrificing my career to care for a man pretending to be crippled? I only want the truth. Charles snapped. In fury, he leapt from the wheelchair, pointing a trembling finger at her. Traitor! You'll pay for this. The room fell silent. The act was destroyed in an instant. Charles himself had shattered the lie he'd sustained for 4 years. The officers pounced, twisting his arms back, snapping handcuffs shut. You just proved the charges, one officer said coldly. It's over, Charles roared, his frailty gone. Amara, I'll destroy you. I have lawyers and money, I'll walk free. Amara stood tall, watching as he was dragged away. Fear no longer lived in her eyes, only resolve. You took 4 years from me. Today, I take it all back. As the police departed, Lady Eleanor collapsed into a chair, white as chalk. Sophie trembled, clutching her belly unconsciously. Impossible, Lady Eleanor whispered. My son, pretending all this time. Amara leaned close, her voice low and steady. You knew, you enabled him, and you will pay too. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened, but no words came. Amara walked out of the mansion. Rain lashed against her face. She tilted her head upward, letting the storm wash away the mask she had worn for 4 years. On the street, Edward and Maylin waited. Edward opened the car door for her, pride in his eyes. You did well. His performance is finished. Amara sank into the seat, exhaling not despair, but release. No, this was only the overture. He'll fight back. But at least from today, I'm no longer his puppet. Edward nodded. Right. Now it's our move. Maylin glanced at her tablet, a smirk tugging at her lips. I've been monitoring the feeds. The news is everywhere. Britain is buzzing about the Whitmore scandal, the paralyzed millionaire hoax. The image of him standing up from his chair is viral. There's no going back. Amara closed her eyes, tears mixing with rain. For the first time in years, she wept not from despair but victory. Courtroom number 3 of the London Family Court was packed with reporters and spectators. The divorce case between Amara Bennett and Charles Whitmore had become the hottest topic in Britain. Everyone wanted to witness the unmasking of a millionaire once hailed as a paragon of resilience. Charles entered exactly as scripted, seated in a wheelchair, clad in a bespoke grey suit, a scarf draped at his neck to heighten his frailty. His face was gaunt, eyes glistening with contrived sorrow. Behind him, Lady Eleanor pushed the chair, her expression etched with grief, while Sophie followed in a simple black dress, feigning mournful loyalty. On the other side, Amara walked in with Edward. She wore a blazing red suit, her design from years before, once featured in British Vogue. The crimson was not just fashion, but defiance. She was no longer the bowed wife. Whispers swept the courtroom. Some admired her, some were shocked, but all eyes locked onto Amara. Judge Charlotte Bennett, sharp-eyed and in her 50s, struck the gavel. This court is now in session. Charles's attorney, Harrison Vale, renowned for defending the powerful, rose first. His voice boomed, heavy with theatrics. Your Honor, today we face a family tragedy. A husband, crippled by a catastrophic accident, has used a wheelchair for 4 years. In that time, he relied entirely on his wife. And what did she do? She abandoned him, inventing wild accusations to seize his fortune. This is betrayal of the cruelest kind, and we will prove that Mrs. Amara Bennett has spun nothing but lies. Charles bowed his head, shoulders trembling in rehearsed agony. Lady Eleanor placed a hand on his shoulder, eyes shimmering. Sophie lowered her gaze, embodying the loyal servant. Edward rose calmly. No theatrics, his voice low but commanding. Your Honor, what the opposing counsel calls tragedy is one of the most elaborate frauds Britain has ever seen. Charles Whitmore faked paralysis for 4 years to siphon millions in insurance payouts, corporate funds, and the devotion of his wife. He did not just betray marriage, he destroyed Amara Bennett's career, health, and life. And today, we present irrefutable proof. The courtroom fell silent. Vale called his first witness, Lady Eleanor. Mrs. Whitmore, have you ever seen your son walk normally in the past 4 years? No, sir, Eleanor replied firmly. I was with him every day. He was in pain, helpless. Amara, on the other hand, was unstable, crying, neglecting his medication. I feared for my son's safety. Vale nodded solemnly. Your Honor, this is why Charles requires protection. Edward stood. Holding up a folder, he said, Mrs. Whitmore, are you aware of monthly transfers of £50,000 from Charles's account into your own? Lady Eleanor froze, then steadied herself. That was a gift from my son. Edward flipped to another page. And how do you explain this email? He read aloud. We must increase pressure on Amara. If she collapses, the psychiatric file will be ready. Fairhaven agrees to a £100,000 donation. Gasps erupted. Eleanor's face flushed crimson, her words stumbling. The judge struck the gavel for order. Edward closed in. Your Honor, Lady Eleanor is no impartial witness. She is an accomplice. Vale hastily called Sophie. Miss Miller, as the house's maid, did you ever see Mr. Whitmore walk? Sophie kept her eyes down, voice trembling. No. He always needed my help. Vale smirked in triumph. But Edward approached, holding up a blown-up photo. Miss Miller, is this the picture you posted on Instagram last month? At Claridge's, with a glass of red wine. Sophie's face drained. Yes. Edward pointed to the reflection on the glass. When enlarged, it clearly shows Mr. Whitmore beside you, perfectly healthy. Care to explain? The gallery erupted. Sophie's hands shook, eyes darting between Charles and Eleanor, who glared at her in silent command. Edward's tone softened, but cut like steel. Miss Miller, you're pregnant, aren't you? Do you want to protect your child or continue shielding a man who used both you and Amara? Her lips quivered, tears spilling. He was never paralyzed. I saw him. He trained, walked, and lived normally. He promised to divorce her and marry me, but everything was a lie. The courtroom exploded. Vale shouted objections, but the damage was done. Edward pressed on, calling the next witness, Henry Ashford. Mr. Ashford, you're a close friend of Charles, yes? Henry, tense in the witness chair, nodded. Yes. Did you play golf with him at Wentworth? Henry hesitated, then sighed. Yes, for 3 years. Charles told me it was secret therapy. He asked me to keep it quiet so Amara wouldn't raise her hopes. Amara's chest clenched, but Edward nodded coldly. 3 years walking, golfing yet still collecting insurance, chaining his wife to servitude. Your Honor, what clearer proof could there be? Charles could no longer maintain the act. He slammed the table, sprang to his feet, roaring. This is all a conspiracy. Amara envies my success. She's a black woman clawing upward, and I gave her everything. She owes me her life. The courtroom froze. In his fury, Charles had revealed his true self, racist, arrogant, ruthless. Amara rose, meeting his eyes with calm fire. No, Charles, I owe you nothing. You stole 4 years of my life. Today, you owe me and justice. Judge Charlotte Bennett fixed Charles with a piercing gaze. Her voice was icy. Mr. Whitmore, your own words have shattered your defense. The evidence is overwhelming. Video, witnesses, and financial records. I grant Mrs. Amara Bennett's divorce petition. All shared assets are awarded to her. Furthermore, this case will be referred to the Crown Prosecution Service for criminal charges of fraud and related offences. Her gavel struck. Amara closed her eyes, tears welling. At last, the chains of 4 years had broken. Edward touched her shoulder gently, murmuring, "This is only the first round, but you've won it." After the family court trial, public opinion exploded. The press branded Charles Whitmore the most disgraceful fraud in history, while social media erupted with the hashtag Whitmore lies. The clip of him leaping from his wheelchair in court, ripping off his own mask of disability, spread everywhere. But for Amara, personal freedom was not enough. Nightmares still haunted her. Charles whispering from the shadows, his voice icy, "You'll never escape me." Edward reassured her, "He'll face criminal charges soon. And I believe there are other victims, not just you. He didn't ruin only one life." Amara frowned. "Who else?" Edward glanced at a folder on the table. "Mei Lin just sent this over. Brace yourself. The truth is far more painful." Amara met Mei Lin again the next day at the safe apartment. The young woman looked exhausted, but her eyes burned with fire. On her laptop screen a list appeared. Sarah Donovan, Marcus Hughes, Victoria Lane. Mei Lin explained, "I found a hidden directory on Charles's computer. He called it his collection. Videos, recordings, journals, documenting how he destroyed each person." Amara's breath caught. "He did this to others, too?" "Yes. Sarah Donovan is a real estate entrepreneur. He lured her into joint investments, then falsified accounts, bankrupting her company. When Sarah grew suspicious, he planted evidence to frame her for embezzlement. She was convicted, her career ruined. She's still in therapy today." Mei Lin clicked on the following file. Marcus Hughes, an executive at Charles's former firm. He exploited their relationship, leaving Marcus to blame for laundering money. Marcus lost his job and his family, and still carries the stigma. Finally, Mei Lin's voice slowed. Victoria Lane, an investigative journalist. She was preparing to expose Charles's shady dealings. He manipulated her circle, staged a campaign that made her believe she was being stalked. After 2 years of psychological erosion, she took her own life. Silence gripped the room. Amara buried her face in her hands, tears streaming. "God. And I thought I was the only one." Edward placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, you're not alone. They carry scars like yours. But you did what they never got the chance to do. You stood up. And because of you, justice can reach them too." Days later, the National Crime Agency held a press conference. Prosecutor Elizabeth Harper declared, "We have uncovered evidence that Charles Whitmore not only committed insurance fraud but also engaged in systematic deception, manipulation, and psychological abuse. At least 3 victims beyond Amara Bennett have been identified. The investigation is expanding, in coordination with the FCA and Scotland Yard." Reporters clamored with questions. Amara sat in the back, her heart pounding. She saw Sarah Donovan in the front row, her blonde hair streaked with grey, her face etched with fatigue. Marcus Hughes was there too, tall but weary-eyed. As camera flashes filled the hall, Amara felt a surge of new energy. Her pain was no longer solitary. It was part of a community of survivors. After the briefing, Sarah approached. Her hand was icy as she clasped Amara's. "I watched your trial," Sarah rasped. "I thought I was the stupidest woman in Britain for trusting him. But when I saw you stand up, I cried all night. You gave me hope." Amara couldn't speak. She only embraced Sarah tightly. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady though heavy. "He destroyed my career. My son hated me for years. But now, because of you, he knows the truth. I want to help in any way I can." Amara nodded, eyes wet. "We'll do this together, not just for me, for all of us." The media exploded again when Sarah, Marcus, and Victoria's stories came to light. Headlines called Charles a social predator, a man who hunted the ambitious but isolated, dismantling them with calculated schemes. In a strategy meeting, Mei Lin remarked, "He wasn't just a fraudster, he was addicted to power. He found pleasure in breaking strong people down to ashes. Amara, he saw you as his perfect experiment, talented, compassionate. He wanted to prove that even someone like you could be shattered." Amara clenched her fists, but he miscalculated. "I didn't break. I bent. And now, I've returned." Edward studied her, his eyes thoughtful. "This isn't just about trials anymore. This is a message. Are you ready to be a voice for those who've been abused?" Amara inhaled deeply, then nodded. "I was silent for 4 years. Now I'll speak. And I'll speak for all the people he's hurt." Amara's first televised interview aired in primetime on the BBC. The camera lingered on her face, lit to highlight eyes both determined and scarred. "Amara Bennett," the host asked, "what made you break your silence?" Amara looked straight into the lens. "Because I know there are others. People were made to believe they were crazy, wrong, and worthless. I want them to know they are not alone. I was there once, but I stood up, and they can too." Millions watched. By the next morning, her inbox overflowed with messages. Women, men, even teenagers, all sharing stories of manipulation, gaslighting, broken trust. Amara read each line, her heart aching yet resolute. Her scar had become a key to unlock empathy. In the detention center, Charles watched the program on TV. His eyes blazed with hatred. "Bitch," he growled. "You think you're a hero? I'll make you regret this. I'll." But the iron door slammed shut, locks clanking. He was forced to face reality for the first time. The story no longer belonged to him. A week later, Amara, Sarah, and Marcus gathered in a small conference room. They shared fragments of their pain, lies, sleepless nights, the scorn of society. When they finished, Amara rose. "We can't change the past, but we can turn scars into strength. I want to create a foundation to support victims of fraud and psychological abuse. We can use our experience to save others." Sarah wept, gripping her hand. Marcus nodded hard, eyes burning. At that moment, Amara felt something she had long forgotten. Hope was not an illusion. Hope was a choice. Judgment Day came under a storm-charged atmosphere. The Central Criminal Court of London, Old Bailey, was packed with reporters, cameras crowding every corner. People called it the trial of the century, not only for the scale of the fraud but for the ruthless psychological manipulation at its core. Amara sat in the witness waiting room. Beside her, Edward, dark suit, steady eyes, placed a gentle hand on hers. "You don't have to listen to him again if you don't want to. The prosecution already has enough evidence." Amara shook her head. "No, I want to hear it. I need to hear the sentence spoken. That will be the full stop to the darkness." In the main courtroom, Charles appeared this time without a wheelchair, without scarves. The orange prison jumpsuit revealed his muscular frame. Yet despite standing tall, the crowd no longer saw a celebrated entrepreneur, only a shameless fraud. Lady Eleanor sat behind him, pale and shaken. She too faced charges: complicity, profiting from fraud, conspiring to commit psychiatric committal. Today, she stood trial alongside her son. Sophie was different. She sat in the witness benches, her pregnancy evident, eyes distant. By agreement, she had partial immunity in exchange for testimony. She had chosen another path, to protect her unborn child, rather than shield the man who had exploited her. Prosecutor Elizabeth Harper rose, her voice ringing. "Your Honor, Charles Whitmore did not merely defraud more than £50 million from insurers and investors. He staged 4 years of paralysis, destroying his wife's life. But that was not all. Evidence shows a recurring pattern, targeting accomplished yet vulnerable individuals, dismantling them for his own sadistic gratification. One of them, Victoria Lane, lost her life. This was not a mere financial crime. This was deliberate, cold, inhuman cruelty. She held up the black leather diary, Amara's discovery. The room held its breath as excerpts were read aloud. Gaslighting phase intensified. Hide items, alter medication, sow memory doubt. Mother contacted Fairhaven psychiatric files ready in case of admission. Amara is now a walking corpse. 6 months until the miracle recovery reveal. Probability of survival beyond 1 year, under 10%. Each line fell like a hammer. Charles sat rigid, eyes blazing, locked on Amara. When defense counsel Harrison Vale rose, he strained against futility. "Your Honor, my client may have erred, but he was under immense pressure: markets, family, expectations. We cannot ascribe malicious intent. These were business misjudgments, not calculated crimes." The judge cut in, voice cold. "Mr. Vale, the diary reveals an 8-year plan. This was not an error. This was a conspiracy." Vale fell silent. Sophie took the stand, voice trembling. "I met Charles at 21. He promised to marry me and give me a future. I believed him. Then I saw him at the gym, walking freely. When I asked, he said it was a secret to protect his image. I was foolish. I became pregnant, thought I mattered, but I was just a pawn. I regret it. Please, give me a chance to start over, at least for my child." Tears spread through the gallery. Amara wept too, not from pity, but from recognizing Sophie as another victim, once complicit, now betrayed. Lady Eleanor was called next. "Mrs. Whitmore, did you receive £50,000 monthly from your son's accounts?" Head bowed. "Yes, Did you contact Fairhaven Psychiatric to prepare Amara's forced commitment? Silence. Yes or no? Yes. Gasps erupted. Eleanor collapsed into her chair, hands shaking. Amara stared, fury mixing with strange sorrow. A mother who chose collusion over truth, destroying herself with her son. Finally, Charles was allowed to speak. He rose, eyes aflame. You think you've won? I am Charles Whitmore. I built companies and created wealth. Every one of you once admired me and begged for my favor. And Amara. He pointed straight at her. You think you've beaten me? You'll always be haunted, always doubting. No man will touch you without you remembering me. I'll live in your head forever. Amara stood, her voice cutting through the chamber. No, Charles. You're no longer in my head. You belong only to the past. And that past is about to be locked behind bars. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked. His voice was steel. Charles Whitmore, you are sentenced to 45 years imprisonment without parole for insurance fraud, financial fraud, evidence tampering, systemic psychological abuse, and conspiracy to deprive another of liberty. All illicit assets are seized and redirected into a victim's compensation fund. He turned. Lady Eleanor Whitmore, you are sentenced to 12 years for complicity and conspiracy to unlawful psychiatric detention. The gavel struck again. Court is adjourned. Applause erupted across the gallery. Amara sank into her chair, tears spilling. The invisible chains had finally shattered, not for Charles, but for the release. Edward leaned close, whispering, It's over. You're free. Amara nodded, her trembling hand gripping his. Not just me. Sarah, Marcus, and even Victoria. Justice has been seen at last. Outside the court, Amara made a brief statement. Cameras, microphones, hundreds of eyes fixed on her. I'm not here to talk about the man who destroyed my life. I'm here to talk about survivors. To all who were made to believe they were crazy, weak, worthless, hear me. You are not alone. You can rise, and justice can be yours. The crowd erupted in applause. By evening, Stand With Amara trended nationwide. That night, Amara, Edward, Sarah, and Marcus gathered in the little flat in Shoreditch. They raised glasses to honor lost years, scars that would never fade, not to celebrate legal victory. Sarah spoke. I still wake in terror. But now I know I'm not mad. I was a victim of evil, and that helps me breathe. Marcus added, voice thick. I lost my family, but today my son called me for the first time in 10 years. He said, Dad, I believe you. That's justice enough for me. Amara's eyes shone. We won't let this story end here. We'll turn it into strength to protect others. Edward lifted his glass, pride in his gaze. Yes, and Amara, you are the spark that lit the fire. She smiled, for the first time in years, truly at peace. Today, justice has been served. Tomorrow, a new life would begin. The following spring, Milan shimmered under golden sunlight. At a showroom on Via della Spiga, European buyers crowded in to see Amara Bennett's new collection. Its name, Phoenix. Every piece bore the imprint of her journey through pain and rebirth. Bold cuts, symbolizing scars, luminous fabrics unfurling like burning wings. The room erupted in thunderous applause when the final model appeared in a blazing red gown. Backstage, Amara's hands trembled, her eyes blurred with tears. She had dreamed of this moment for 4 years. For the first time, her dream was not cut short by a fabricated accident. For the first time, the lights belonged solely to her. After the show, Edward appeared not the rigid lawyer, but a man with a gentle smile. You see, he whispered, you didn't just survive, you conquered. Amara laughed through tears. No, Edward. We conquered. You, Maylin, Sarah, Marcus. Without you all, I'd still be lying on that cold floor in Mayfair, believing I was worthless. Edward squeezed her hand. And without you, none of them would ever have stood up. You are living proof of rebirth. Their eyes held something no longer hidden affection built not from shared trauma, but from truth and respect. In London, the Phoenix Foundation launched. Its mission, to support victims of psychological abuse, especially gaslighting. Sarah oversaw therapy, Marcus handled finance, and Amara served as ambassador. At the opening, Amara stood before hundreds, her voice steady and strong. "I once thought I was alone. The truth is, thousands suffer in silence. The Phoenix Foundation exists to tell them, you are not crazy, you are not weak, you are not worthless. You are being manipulated. And together, we will break free." The hall erupted in applause. Many wept. Sophie was there too, cradling a newborn girl. Amara approached. In Sophie's eyes, there was no defiance, only shy gratitude. "Thank you," Sophie whispered. "If not for you, my child would have grown up with a monster for a father. I can't erase what I did, but I want to start again." Amara touched the baby's tiny hand. "What's her name?" "Victoria Hope," Sophie replied, tears glistening. Amara's chest tightened. Victoria to honor the journalist who had died. Hope for the new future. She smiled. "Raise her in truth, Sophie. That's the only way the past won't repeat itself." News from prison reported that Charles was unraveling. He demanded interviews, insisting on telling his side, but the public no longer cared. Papers ignored him. Old allies turned their backs. One evening, Amara received an email from a journalist. "He wants your response. He says you'll never be free until you face him again." Amara typed a short reply. "I am already free. I need nothing more from him." She pressed send, feeling the final door close. A year later, Amara and Edward attended the wedding of Marcus and Sarah, two lives once shattered by Charles, now healed together. When they exchanged rings, Amara wept. Edward leaned close, murmuring, "See? He tried to leave scars, but we turned them into bridges." Amara nodded, threading her fingers through his. In her heart, a truth resounded. Real love does not erase pain, but transforms it into strength. That summer, Amara returned to Birmingham, to the place of her birth. She passed her old house, then knelt at her mother's grave. The headstone read, "A woman who taught her daughter courage." Amara placed white chrysanthemums and whispered, "Mother, at last I am free. I've returned to my dream. I've learned that love does not mean self-destruction. I only wish you were here to see me now." A gentle breeze lifted her dress hem. Amara closed her eyes and smiled. On her final night in Milan, Amara stood on a hotel balcony, gazing at the city ablaze with lights. Edward stepped beside her, hand on her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking of the past," she said, "of 4 years imprisoned, of sleepless nights, and I think, if I had the chance to go back, I'd walk through it again." Edward stared. "Why?" "Because otherwise, I'd never know my strength. I'd never have met you, Sarah, Marcus, and Mei Lin. I'd never have become the woman I am today." Edward's voice softened. "Amara, I've never met anyone who could turn ashes into flame. You truly are a phoenix." Her eyes shone. "No, I am not just a phoenix. I am Amara Bennett, and this time, no one will ever clip my wings again." Her story spread worldwide. Fashion magazines wrote not only about Phoenix, the collection, but also about her rise above psychological abuse. Universities invited her to speak. Survivors sought the Phoenix Foundation. Amara realized that her most significant victory was not Charles's imprisonment. It was transforming her personal pain into light for thousands. One evening, Edward brought her home to their new apartment by the Thames. Sunlight flooded every corner. He poured wine, then grew solemn. "Amara, we've walked through hell, but now, I want to ask, are you ready for an ordinary future? A family, quiet days, no more drama." Amara laughed, tears brimming. "Ordinary? After everything?" "Yes, Edward. I crave that ordinary more than anything." They clinked glasses. Outside, fireworks burst over the city, painting the sky. Amara looked into his eyes, and for the first time in years, she saw the future not bound by the past, but blazing with her own choice. That night, she opened a new notebook, the first page of her new life, and wrote, "Once, I was a puppet in someone else's play, but I took back the pen. I write my script now, in blood, tears, and love. This is not the story of a victim. This is the story of a phoenix unbroken." She set down her pen, smiling softly. Outside, dawn began to rise.